Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Casio EFK-100D-2A. This watch is available from Casio.com for £269 British, which is €304 respectively. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a watch box which is protected by this white cardboard sleeve. On the sleeve we have the Edifice emblem and Edifice logo as well as Casio. One removes the cardboard sleeve. This is the cardboard watch box. Again we have Edifice and Casio, striped finish to the matte blue cardboard, and although basic it does suffice in protecting the watch in shipping from any damage. Inside the base there's a piece of folded cardboard with a cutout in the centre, and the watch sits upon this piece of folded cardboard as you can see, and it is basic but it does work in protecting the watch in shipping. However, this is disappointing. One has to appreciate we are not looking at a Casio digital watch. If this were below €100 and it were housing a Casio digital watch, one could be magnanimous, but this is Casio's first automatic powered by the Seiko NH35A, and therefore at €304 price point, the price point is higher, therefore one would expect a better quality watch box than this basic cardboard watch box. I would like to see a plastic watch box, or alternatively a vinyl or PU leather coated watch box, alternatively a vinyl or PU leather watch roll, but something better than this basic inexpensive default option. The least expensive option, a cardboard watch box. With regards to items that come with the piece, it comes with this cardboard tag. On the reverse we have the full reference number for the piece and the module number 5755, which in reality is a Seiko NH35A automatic. This is the owner's instruction manual in the form of a fold-out leaflet. Clear, concise diagrams. The instructions are in English and also translated into a plethora of foreign languages. It details the operation of the movement use, which Casio call the module number 5755, but as I've detailed, in reality it is a Seiko caliber NH35A automatic. This leaflet is the warranty card, and again, translated into English and a plethora of foreign languages, and it activates the 2-year international warranty from the date of purchase. So I want to give due credit to Casio here, because often low tier brands and low tier micro brands between €0 and €500 price point only cover their watches with a 12-month international warranty. 2 years of international warranty is the industry standard for mid-tier pieces from €500 to €5,000, so it is good to see at the €304 price point, 2 years of international warranty versus 12 months, which is the industry standard. So excellent. And lastly, one also gets this leaflet. Now, this leaflet, which is in English and translates into a plethora of foreign languages, details disposal of waste electrical and electronic equipment of products for household use. This is completely irrelevant because, as I've detailed, this piece is Casio's first automatic, powered by the Seiko NH35A. It's not a battery-powered piece, so therefore one doesn't need a leaflet advising how to dispose of waste electrical or electronic equipment. This watch is not battery-powered, it's not electronic equipment. Now, the reason why I'm critical of this is because if you look at the base of this sleeve, it says "Love the Sea and the Earth," and then we have this recyclable symbol, and this denotes that Casio are proud of being conscientious and using environmentally friendly recyclable materials such as a cardboard watch box, cardboard sleeve, but they say "Love the Sea and Earth," but then at the same time they've wasted paper and ink by simply printing this disposal of waste electrical and electronic equipment with a watch that's automatic. There is no battery to dispose of. So on one hand they're trying to be conscientious and show you that as a marketing ploy, but on the other hand, on every single EFK100 they are producing, they're including this irrelevant leaflet, which is a waste of paper and ink. So they should admit that. Now, with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 39mm case diameter, we have a 43.5mm lug-to-lug measurement, a thickness of 12.6mm, and a lug width of 11.8mm. The integrated bracelet, which is an H-link flat-link bracelet, is flared and tapers from 22mm at the widest point down to 18mm at the 2-button push clasp. Pressed stainless steel clasp, and it is debossed with Edifice to a good standard, and light gauge to it, but large mirror polished bevels which mark the transitions between the brushed satin finished body and the mirror polished flanks. Now, disappointingly, it's pressed, so it's light gauge, but the other disappointment is we only have 2 micro adjustment holes. Now, this H-link bracelet does not have half links, therefore it's difficult to get the correct fit, because sometimes adding or subtracting a half link from a flat link bracelet like this doesn't give the desired fit. It either feels too tight or too loose. In the absence of a micro adjustment clasp, I'd like to see a longer clasp used with 4 or 5 micro adjustment holes drilled in the flanks. The problem with these micro adjustment holes is there are only 2, and look how close they are together. Not even a half link apart, so this gives negligible adjustments. So it's not even a half link, it's a quarter link of adjustment, which of course isn't going to suffice, because what one needs in the absence of a 10mm H link is a 5mm adjustment. So for example, 4 or 5 micro adjustment holes in the flanks of the body of the clasp. This is just not good enough. 2 button push triggers are recessed into cutouts and they're mirror polished to a good standard. Solid mil 316L grade stainless steel internals, as one would expect, which we'll examine. So, flat sapphire crystal. However, the negative is, and I want you to be aware of this, there is no AR coating. This is wholly unacceptable for a €304 piece, because in the low tier, we are seeing Chinese-made pieces, and I will use the Steel Dive SD 1953 for reference. That is only €80. But even though it's only €80 in the low tier, it has AR coating on the underside of the sapphire crystal. That is now the industry standard in 2025, regardless of whether a piece is €0 to €500 in the low tier. This is €304, well within the low tier, but as you can see, this is the problem. There is a lot of glare and highly reflective nature due to the lack of AR coating. It is like a flat mirror. This is absolutely dreadful. It is wholly unacceptable to see this on a €304 price point piece. As you can see, when you tilt the piece at an oblique angle, it is like a flat mirror. This makes it difficult to read the time, it makes it difficult to read the date, and it's just dreadful. Now, to put this into perspective, the reason why I'm so heavily critical of it is not just the price point, €304. The cost to Casio, in terms of production cost, of adding AR coating to the underside of sapphire crystals is negligible. We're not talking about €1 per piece increase in production cost. It is fractions of a euro. It's a matter of cents per piece, because Casio are producing their watches in incredible volume. So I'll put it into perspective. The Casio F91W, which is an iconic piece, they are producing an incredible 3 million pieces per annum. Now, the number of pieces they're producing, the EFK-100, is not in the public domain, and it hasn't been in production for a full 12-month cycle yet. So therefore I can't comment on it, but I'm absolutely confident they are producing these in the millions, not the hundreds of thousands, the millions. So, point I'm making is, when you're producing batches of over 100,000 pieces, it is a cost of 1 to 2 cents per piece production cost to add AR coating to a sapphire crystal. It is negligible to Casio. And of course, this is €304. It should be mandatory to have AR coating. So dreadful, very disappointing, and as you can see, it's highly detrimental because you cannot read the time, you cannot read the dates when you tilt the piece at an oblique angle. So we have mirror polished baton hands, which are skeletonized, and they're faceted rather than being flat. They've done a good job of mirror polishing and are correctly proportioned. The tip of the baton hand extends all the way to the indices and the white minute 6 on the chapter ring, which is beveled, and the hour hand is long enough to extend to the applied indices, which are stick indices, and again beveled and polished to a good standard. Needlepoint second hand also extends to the white minute 6 on the chapter ring, which is good. Textured dial, very aesthetically pleasing, and I like the navy blue tone to it, and it complements the navy blue ring around the dial and also the beveled chapter ring. White minute 6 on the chapter ring are clearly printed, the high definition and crisp, as is the Edifice, Casio and automatic on the dial. What I like about the dial is it's clean. It's not over-branded with the necessary text and specification. For example, we don't have the water resistance rating, 100 metres, which is negligible for a daily wear piece. Automatic is just the right amount of information, and I like the balance because 2 lines of text, Edifice, Casio, and then automatic balances well. The other thing I like about the dial is it's symmetrical versus asymmetrical, and they've made the correct decision by citing the date complication at 6 versus the default position of 3 because it balances the dial, and we've got double applied indices at 12, which gives good symmetry to the dial. Excellent. Mirror polishing to the indices works very well, complements the mirror polishing to the faceted skeletonized baton hands, and I really like the quality of the dial execution. Quality of the printing to the textured blue is good, and also the bevel and the ring around the dial beneath the applied indices, they've done a very good job. Subjectively, I'm going to be critical of the white date wheel with black Arabic numerals because I think a black date wheel with white Arabic numerals would blend better with the textured dial, but this is subjective. Some collectors like the legibility of a white date wheel with black Arabic numerals. With dark navy blue dials, I personally prefer a black date wheel. But it comes down to your personal taste. So dial is well executed. I like the 3D effects of it. Just a shame it hasn't got AR coating, because as you can see, that's the problem. Bezel is solid 316L grade stainless steel, flat profile versus a domed profile. Mirror polishing to the top, side and the edge is excellent. What I like about it is it's low profile, so it allows the flat sapphire crystal to project above it, and there's a bevel on the edge of the sapphire crystal, and when you tilt the piece at an oblique angle, the bevel on the edge of the sapphire crystal catches the light. Case is solid 316L grade stainless steel, angular profile to it, longitudinal brushed satin finish to the top of the lugs, large mirror polished bevels which are angular, and they mark the transition between the top of the lugs and the flanks of the case. Mirror polishing to the flanks of the case is excellent, so quality of the finishing to the bezel and the case is stellar. Beautiful luster to the brushed satin finishing, beautiful mirror polishing to the flanks. What I like about the case is it's slender. So the case flanks are not slab-sided, they're not too thick, and I like that they've deleted some of the meats with the large undercuts, and they've done a good job of machining a bevel to the undercuts to the flanks and also mirror polishing it, so therefore that deletes the meat. Visually it looks aesthetically pleasing, but also enhances comfort level and feel good factor. So H-link bracelet, which is flat link. Let's check the N-link articulation. Articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, that's the benefit. However, excess play, dreadful. Lateral, side to side, up and down, play in every single direction. The worst play is lateral, side to side. You can see there when I move the case and brace it, we are looking at 1mm plus of movements, which is excessive. This is wholly unacceptable. €304. This should be nice and tight, friction interference fit. This is simply caused by poor tolerances. So to clarify, it's simply caused by an undersized diameter spring bar going through an oversized diameter hole in the N-link of the H-link bracelet. And then what you have is sloppy fit. And we're looking at 1mm plus of lateral play. So it rattles. And again, my concern is long-term durability, because this puts the pin under shear load. And of course, eventually what will happen is the metal fatigues and then fails. But it's dreadful because it rattles. This does not say to me €304 level build quality, quality control, materials, finishing, tolerances. It's dreadful. On a positive note, the H-link bracelet is finished well with regards to brushed satin finishing. Beautiful luster to the brushed satin finishing to the flat link H-link bracelet. And what I like about it is the centre rectangles in the H-links have bevels which are machined on the edge, and the bevels are mirror polished. So that does add interest and also gives the piece a high quality feel. Beautiful luster to the top side and underside, and that complements or contrasts the mirror polishing to the flanks. And we've got double push pins which are split pins, and I like the pairs of split pins. It does aesthetically look better than just singles. Unfortunately, it rattles. There's excess longitudinal, lateral, side to side and up and down play in every single one of the links of the H-link bracelet, and the cumulative effect across the length of the bracelet is it's sloppy. It rattles. Dreadful. One could be magnanimous if this were a low tier piece below €100, but this is not. This is €304. So for reference, compare this to the quality of bracelets used on San Martin pieces at a similar €300 price point with screw pins. Regardless of whether it's an oyster style bracelet or Jubilee style bracelet, the point is the quality. The build quality is higher at the same price point. This is dreadful. Push pins are a production cost cutting measure in order to maximise profit margin per piece, but even though it uses push pins, one could be magnanimous if they tighten up the tolerances. This is sloppy. On a positive note, H-link bracelet articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. It is fluid, but there is far too much play in it. No sharp edge to the top edge or the lower edge of the flanks. That's the benefit, because it doesn't scratch the wrist and it doesn't pull arm hairs. Let's check the other side for continuity. Again, N-link articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. That's the benefit. Dreadful. 1mm plus excess lateral play, and it clicks. Up and down, side to side, play in every single direction. The lateral side to side play is the worst at 1mm plus. Dreadful. Again, articulates freely. Doesn't feel stiff or kink, but sloppy. Rattles. Every single one of the H-link links has excess play. The split pins are dreadful. The tolerances are dreadful. You can see. Rattles. Now on a positive note, no sharp edge to the top edge or the lower edge of the flanks. Doesn't pull arm hairs. So visually it looks good because of the beautiful luster and the mirror polishing to the bevels on the rectangle centres. But it looks good, feels good, because of course doesn't pull arm hairs, doesn't scratch, but rattles. sloppy. Let's look at the clasp in detail. So light gauge to pressed stainless steel. Problem with it is beautiful luster to it, but I dislike these cutouts with the recessed pushers or buttons or triggers. The problem is it just looks like a low quality clasp. It's very light gauge, and as I've detailed, it's detrimental to have two holes drilled so close together. Quarter link of adjustment versus half link of adjustment. It's negligible. On a positive note, opens freely. So two buttonpush triggers are heavily sprung loaded. They feel reliable and robust, but this looks like a Casio digital watch buckle. It's just not a very good clasp. That's the problem with it. It's just poor quality, light gauge. Now on a positive note, it's not pressed internals. We've got solid 316L grade stainless steel milled internals, as one would expect with an Edifice series piece. Let's check the hinge pins. Left hand hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. Dreadful. Sloppy. Lateral, side to side, up and down play. Lateral play is excessive. Clicks. My concern is excess shear load, therefore it's going to fail. Centre hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. Again, excess play, lateral, side to side, up and down play, clicks. Finally, right hand hinge pin, which is actually a spring bar, articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. Excess play. Dreadful. Look at the amount of play. Now, cumulative effect is left hand, centre and right hand hinge pins all have excess play, and cumulatively you then have a sloppy mill clasp with far too much play. Now just bear with me, I'll get the camera tool to focus on this. Look at the amount of play in this clasp. It's just dreadful. Again, the reason why I'm so critical of this, heavily critical, is because of long-term durability. Because when you have pins which are undersized diameter going through an oversized diameter hole, that puts the pin under excess shear load. And then what happens is the hole becomes ovalized, the pin becomes ovalized, and that increases the slack. It's no longer a friction interference fit, it's sloppy. And eventually what happens is with metal fatigue, the pin shears and of course fails, and then the clasp opens, piece falls on the ground, becomes damaged. That's why I'm so heavily critical. Below €100, one can be magnanimous about some production cost cutting measures and of course lack of tolerances and lack of quality control. €304 price point. This does not say to me €304 price point of quality control, builds quality and tolerances. This is dreadful. So it's poor quality, that's the truth of it. Now on a positive note, brass satin finish to the top side, underside and flanks is good, beautiful luster to it. Nice heavy gauge to the 316L grade stainless steel. No sharp edge to the top edge or the lower edge of the flanks, so therefore it doesn't scratch the wrist. Centre sections have been deburred very well, so there's no sharp corners. So beautiful luster. Visually it looks good. I like the gauge to it, but the problem is the build quality and the quality control is poor. Tolerances are dreadful. The three pins are very loose, so they need to tighten up the tolerances. Right, so let's check the push-pull crown execution. So knurled crown, solid 316L grade stainless steel, large chamfer which deletes the tips of the knurling. Concentric CNC lathe tool machined. It's sterile and unsigned. Another production cost cutting measure too far, because €304, this should be signed with Casio, either engraved with Casio or embossed with Casio. And there is enough diameter for Casio to fit if they use a small font, or simply Edifice, they could put the Edifice emblem alternatively. But it needs to be signed at this price point. We're not looking at a below €100 piece here. This is €304. It is wholly unacceptable to have a daily wear piece with a sterile crown at this price point. On a positive note, the proportion is good. So when you flex the wrist, the crown doesn't dig into the back of the hand. The other benefit is it's well finished, so it's not sharp, it's grippy and tactile, easy to get good purchase with your index finger and thumb. Now, push-pull crown provides an effective hermetic seal to 100 metres, which is good. They could have downgraded it to 50 as a production cost-cutting measure. 100 is strong specification for a daily wear piece. So as it's a push-pull crown versus a screw-down crown, in the closed position, one can manually wind the Seiko caliber NH35A to its maximum 41-hour power reserve. Feels smooth, and you'll all be familiar with the NH35A. It does feel pleasant to manually wind. One can feel the tension in the mainspring gradually building up to its maximum 41 hours, which is good. Putting it out to the first click position is the quick set date complication, and you rotate the crown anti-clockwise, it advances the quick set date to the next day of the month. It's something I really like about the NH35A. Nice, heavy, quick set date complication. Loud audible clicks, sound good and also feel good. What I like about this is the alignment is correct. The single and the double Arabic numerals are not too far to the left or the right of the date window, and they're not too high or too low. Font is high definition and crisp, it's sharp, it's not too thick and blurry. Legibility is good. Although it does have a thick textured dial, sometimes the problem with thick textured dials is the thickness causes a permanent shadow around the date window. But this is good because the aperture, the cutout for the date window, is wide enough and long enough, and therefore it allows enough light to enter the date window. So one doesn't get the shadow around the Arabic numerals, which is often the problem. And so although the dial is thick and textured, the size of the date window is the correct size for the fonts used for the Arabic numerals. So legibility is good. Readability is good despite the lack of the AR coating, because as I've detailed, when you tilt it at an oblique angle, you can't read the time of the date, but nonetheless, straight on, it is good. Putting it out to the second click position hacks the movement, and if you look at the second hand, you can see it's now stopped dead, so therefore it's possible to set the time precisely to the second with the Calibre NH35A automatic. So now in the time setting position, doesn't feel stiff, doesn't feel rough or gritty, feels smooth, feels pleasant to set the time. You will all be familiar with the NH35A, does feel good to set the time. There is some backplay in the gearing, but I'm going to be magnanimous because it's just a characteristic of the NH35A. There is a mechanical reason for the backplay, which I often reference in my reviews, but I'll reiterate it for the benefit of those of you that have not heard it. The reason for the backplay in gearing in the winding gears of an automatic calibre like this movement is because if there were not backplay between the teeth of the gears, if it were perfectly tight, when you push the crown and winding stem back into the calibre, it would cause the winding gears to jump out of position, and therefore it would cause the minute hand to jump out of position rather than remaining static. So what they do is they machine some gaps, some bevels in between the teeth of the winding gears, and that gives it some slack in between the teeth. They don't mesh perfectly tightly. And of course the benefit of that is when you push the crown and winding stem back into the calibre, the winding gears remain static because the slack in the gearing takes up that movement and it doesn't cause the minute hand to jump out of position. It remains static, which is good. That's the reason for it. So I'm going to be magnanimous about the backplay. It's slight. It's similar to the backplay in a Miyota 8215 or 8315, and it's more backplay than a 9015 or 9039 respectively, more backplay than an SW200-1, which you'll be familiar with. So it's okay. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement. The second hand begins to sweep around the dial, the characteristic 3 Hz sweep. You'll know this from my previous reviews, but again I'm going to reiterate it. I dislike the stutter or judder of the 3 Hz sweep of the NH35A, running at 21,600 vibrations per hour. I prefer the smoother 4 Hz sweep of a 9015 or an SW200-1, for example, running at 28,800 vibrations per hour because it's more aesthetically pleasing. It looks smoother. But I appreciate for the majority of collectors this is not detrimental. It's just a characteristic of the NH35A, the stutter or judder of the 3 Hz sweep. It is just the way it is. So, manual winding works well, quick set date complication works well, setting the time works well, hacking works well. It's good. The NH35A is a reliable, well-proven workhorse calibre, and it's good to see Casio using it for the first time versus using a quartz battery-powered module. So, let's look at the Expedition Caseback in detail. Now, to clarify something, front of the piece is glazed with sapphire crystal with no AR coating. Screw down Expedition Caseback provides an effective hermetic seal to 100 metres, which is strong specification. However, production cost cutting measure again because we have mineral crystal glazing. Now, on one hand, subjectively, one could be magnanimous and say, well, strictly speaking, the Expedition Caseback doesn't need sapphire crystal because it's not, unlike the front of the piece, an area that's prone to being scuffed and scratched with daily wear and tear. The mineral crystal glazing is just rubbing against the wrist. It's not going to become scuffed and scratched. That's fair enough. However, again, I'll reference the huge volumes Casio are producing their pieces. 3 million pieces of F91W per annum. I'm absolutely confident they are producing millions of these EFK-100s per annum, and definitely in the hundreds of thousands. So therefore, the production cost increase, glazing this with sapphire crystal versus mineral crystal, is negligible. We are not looking at €1 production cost increase per piece to upgrade this to sapphire crystal. We are talking fractions of €1. So 1 cent, 2 cents per piece increase in production cost to Casio, negligible. So they really should be using sapphire crystal in the front, sapphire crystal in the back, and of course they are coating as I've detailed. But mineral crystal is okay, it does do the job. Same clarity, and of course one doesn't need AR coating in the back, but the point is it should be sapphire crystal at €304. We're not looking at a below €100 piece here. €304. Mineral crystal is another production cost cutting measure too far. So concentric CNC lathe tool machines to the stainless steel portion of it, and then it's embossed with the specification reference number of the piece and the module 5755, which in reality is the NH35A. And they've been honest about it because the embossing says front sapphire crystal, and that's basically declaring that the back is not sapphire crystal, it's mineral. But they've been honest about it, which is fair enough. Now, they've decorated the rotor with Edifice Casio, and of course, in reality, it's an NH35A rotor, and they simply printed on, they've laser etched it actually, Edifice Casio in black. So undecorated. Now, my criticism of the Caseback, it's well finished, mirror polishing around the circumference is good, milled slots are D-Bird and chamfered, that's good. So it's smooth, it's comfortable, enhances comfort level and feel good factor. But my criticism is, it's far too thick. It's deep. The mineral crystal glazing is too thick, there's too much clearance between the underside of the mineral crystal and the rotor. And the other problem is the stainless steel portion of it is far too deep. This is a deep bubble back Caseback. This adds 1mm to 1.5mm too much thickness to this piece. Now, one can be magnanimous because we're not looking at a thick slab of 316L grade stainless steel. The case is thin, the bezel is low profile, and the flat sapphire crystal are all correct. But yes, it's only 12.6. We're not looking at a 13.5 plus piece, which is fair enough. But they could have reduced this down to only 12mm or even 11.6 simply by using a lower profile exhibition Caseback, because it doesn't need to be this deep. We're not looking at a dive piece with 200 or 300 meters here. This is 100 meters, but yet it's got a very thick mineral crystal, too much clearance beneath it, and then the stainless steel portion is 1mm to 1.5mm too thick. And it really doesn't need to be this thick. I've seen other NH35A powered pieces with 100 meters and an exhibition Caseback like this, but they're far flatter. They are not bubble back as per a 200 or 300 meter dive piece. And I'll show you the problem with this in the wrist shots. This adds too much thickness, 1 to 1.5mm of additional thickness, and it means that the head of the piece sits on top of the wrist rather than curving around it as an integrated bracelet piece should do. So they've actually ruined the fit of this piece. The feel good factor and comfort level are diminished by this one massive error. Deep Caseback, crystal too thick, stainless steel portion of it too thick. This looks like a 200 or 300 meter bubble back Caseback used on a dive piece, not an integrated daily wear piece with 100 meters. Dreadful. On a positive note, the integrated end links are a good tight fit to the head of the piece. Now, when I say good tight fit, I'm referring to the side to side, which is good. But the lateral, as I've demonstrated, is bad. We've got 1mm of lateral play, but the actual side to side is good. So again, they've made a mistake by using standard stainless steel spring bars. They could have enhanced it by using quick release stainless steel spring bars, because that would make it to exchange the H-link bracelet for an alternative strap easier. The other problem is 11.8 does limit the strap options, because unlike a Tissot PRX, for example, which uses a similar internal lug width, that does have options, leather and rubber strap options, but this 11.8mm internal lug width means there's less options. 12 would be better, of course, but that's just the size they've chosen. The underside head of the piece is concentric CNC lathe tool machine to a good standard, beautiful luster. 4 tips of the lugs have bevels, that's good, it deletes the sharp corners, and there are large bevels on the left and the right hand flank which have been mirror polished, that deletes the sharp edges. So finishing to the head of the piece is good. Caseback is well finished but incorrect proportions. End links are well finished but sloppy fit. Right, so I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now, I haven't sized the bracelet, and it does come with a very long bracelet. This will fit up to a 9-inch wrist size. You can see I can easily slide and index 2 fingers beneath the bracelet and clasp at all times. This indicates this will fit up to a very large 9-inch wrist size. To clarify, there are enough removable links on the 6 o'clock and the 12 o'clock side of the bracelet to size this down to a minimum 6-inch wrist size up to a maximum 9-inch wrist size. But problem is lack of half links. This could be maximised in terms of comfort level and feel good factor, or optimised if they simply added a half link on the 6 and a half link on the 12 side of the bracelet, because as I've detailed, often adding or subtracting one full link from an H-link bracelet doesn't give the desired fit. The bracelet feels too tight or feels too loose. The other problem is they've only got a quarter link of adjustment with these 2 holes in the flanks. It needs to have 4 or 5 holes and a longer clasp, or ideally a ratcheting micro adjustment mechanism. And for reference, compare this to the ratcheting micro adjustment clasp used on San Martin pieces at the €300 price point in the low tier. They're also using the NH35A, similar specification, but ratcheting micro adjustment clasp with 10mm on the fly adjustment, far superior. There is no excuse for Casio not to be using a similar style clasp at €304 price point. So, clasp is correctly proportioned in terms of curvature, but really I think they should have lengthened it and also added 4 or 5 micro adjustment holes, and ideally a half link on the 6 and a half link on the 12 side. Now, in terms of taper, they've made a mistake. They've used one of the 2 industry standards. So to clarify, 22 to 18 is one industry standard for larger pieces, 41, 42mm for example. For smaller pieces that are 39 and 40, 20 to 16 perfection personified taper that's often referred to is the industry standard for good reason. Visually it's very aesthetically pleasing. Comfort level and feel good factor cannot be beaten, regardless of whether it's a oyster style, jubilee style, flat link bracelet, H-link bracelet, beads of rice style bracelet. Same applies. 20 to 16 is perfection personified for a 39mm. It cannot be surpassed. But Casio have made the mistake because they've chosen the other industry standard for larger pieces, which is 22 to 18. There's too much meat on this bracelet. Although it does have an aggressive taper from 22 to 18, the bracelet looks too wide for the head of the piece. 39mm, it should be 20 to 16. 22 to 18 is far too wide. The other problem is the bracelet links are too thick. So what we have here is correctly proportioned head of the piece, bracelet which is incorrectly proportioned, and there's far too much meat on the bracelet. This is 150 grams and it should be 130 to 135 with a 39mm and an integrated bracelet, because this only has a pressed stainless steel clasp. It's not a solid milled micro adjustment clasp, and of course there's lack of heft on the clasp, too much meat on the bracelet, so then what you have is it feels like a top heavy piece. And it's really not down to the case having too much meat on it, it's down to the bracelet having too much meat and then the clasp being far too light, because this light gauge of pressed stainless steel as a production cost cutting measure. So they've made error after error here. Clasp is not heavy enough, there's not enough meat on it, bracelet has too much meat, and then of course the head of the piece and the bracelet just don't balance. So incorrect taper is the main problem. It should be 20 to 16, but it's 22 to 18. Now on a positive note, it does have a beautiful luster, but the fit on this piece is dreadful. And when I say it's dreadful for all wrist sizes, 6 to 7 and 7 to 8. Look at the gap beneath the tip of the angular lugs. This is one of the worst fitting pieces. I've reviewed over 500 pieces on my channel, from low tier to mid tier to high tier. Everything from a €20 Casio F91W to a €24,000 Rolex Sky Dweller inclusive. And I have reviewed a plethora of integrated bracelet pieces. Pieces with integrated bracelets like this, flat link bracelets and H-link bracelets. And I can tell you, this is one of the worst fits I've ever seen. Just look at the gap beneath the tips of the case. The lugs. Dreadful. And look at the lack of articulation, because what we have is this centre section of the N-link, or the integrated case, is a slab of rectangle 316L stainless steel. And it projects too far. They've made it the centre section too long. The lugs are too long on this case. Now, the case itself is compact. It's only 43.5. But what they've done is, they could have used a female pooted N-link here. That would have enhanced it. And of course, it's an H-link bracelet, so it would have been very easy to add a rectangle here and a female pooted N-link. Then you have excellent articulation. But you can see the problem. The H-link in the end of the integrated bracelet can never pull close to the wrist. It's permanently kept static, because you can see it doesn't pivot, because what we have effectively here is a male N-link rather than a female pooted N-link. That's the point I'm making. So visually it doesn't look good, because we've got this large rectangular slab projecting out of the centre, which is too long. And then of course we don't have a female pooted N-link. What we have is an H-link, and it then drops vertically, as you can see. Rather than curving around the wrist or angling around the wrist, we have this gap. Now you can see the problem with the bubble back case back. Just bear with me, I'll get the camera tool to focus. See how deep the caseback is there? 1 to 1.5 millimeters too thick. It's like a dive watch caseback. If this were a dive piece with 200 or 300 meters, one could be magnanimous and say, well, yes, it does need a deep bubble back caseback for 200 to 300 meters of hermetic seal plus additional clearance around the rotor. Just bear with me, I'll get the camera to focus. But just look how high the case sits. The case itself is slender. So this is really bad because on a positive note, they made the correct decision by using a flat sapphire crystal versus a double dome sapphire crystal or box top hat crystal, adding 2 millimeters of thickness. So sapphire crystal is flat, bezel is low profile, case is low profile, thin flanks. But then they messed it up by simply adding this deep bubble back case back, and that makes the piece 1 to 1.5 millimeters too thick, and it makes it sit on top of the wrist like a thick slab of 316L grade stainless steel. So the fit is absolutely dreadful. And you can see the gap. It's permanently beneath the head of the piece and it's permanently underneath the bracelet. The bracelet never pulls close to the wrist, regardless of how you size it. Whether you size the bracelet tight or loose on the wrist, whether you have a 6 to 7 or a 7 to 8 inch wrist, you're never going to get a good fit. You can see, because when you flex the wrist, it sits up on the wrist like so. So it actually looks like a 13.5 tall, thick piece. It doesn't look like 12.6, which is what its actual thickness is. So wrist presence is good, 39mm, it's enough to satisfy. Compact lug to lug 43.5 should be beneficial for small wrist sizes of 6 to 7, but it's not. This does not fit a 6 to 7 and it does not fit a 7 to 8 due to the bubble back case back ruining it. And of course it's then compounded by the male N-link in the integrated case rather than a female putted N-link in the H-link bracelet, which would correct the error. So wrist presence is good. And compact lug to lug is correct. And of course, as I've detailed, bracelet taper is another incorrect decision. 22 to 18, too much meat. Should be 20 to 16, perfection personified. So it's just mistake after mistake. Case back, N-link, taper. 3 out of 3 things wrong. Dreadful. And of course then we have the problem of when you tilt the piece at an oblique angle, it's like a mirror. You can see there. You can't read the time or dates when you tilt the piece. No AR coating. So disappointing piece. Comfort level and feel good factor are diminished, and of course the legibility of it is diminished because we don't have AR coating. There you can see it's like a flat mirror. Dreadful. Now in terms of heft, 150 grams is with a very long bracelet. So needless to say, if you're going to size this for a 6 to 7 inch wrist, you're going to be removing 4 to 6 links. If you have a 7 to 8 inch wrist, you're going to be removing 2 to 4 links. So you will reduce this to circa 125 to 135 grams. 150 and below is the sweet spot, as you know, for 39mm pieces on a bracelet. So yes, at 130 to 135, this will be a comfortable piece. In terms of heft, it's not too heavy. That's the point I'm making. But fit will never satisfy, as you can see. On the 12 and the 6 o'clock sides of the piece, it sits on top of the wrist. It never curves around or angles around the wrist. So dreadful. They've just made mistake after mistake with it. And they've got the fundamentals incorrect. Everything about it. Right, so let's do a Lume test and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. So this uses C3 Super Lume labour on the skeletonized baton hands. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, disappointing. Lack of potency to the exciter. They've made mistake after mistake here. So first mistake is skeletonized hands, because they don't allow for a large area or a large plot for the C3 to be applied. And you can see the problem. There's not enough lume on the hands. They should have just used baton hands and fully lumed the full length of the hands, and of course that would enhance the performance because you would be able to read the time in the dark better, which is the purpose of having lume. Also, if you look at the stick indices, which are mirror polished and beveled, you can see we don't have C3 Super Lume labour. We're clearly not looking at 5 to 6 layers on the hands, and there's no lume on the dial. So in the dark, all you have is the tips of these baton hands are looms with 2 to 3 or a maximum of 3 to 4. The potency of the exciter is so bad that the camera can't even autofocus on it. You can see there, when it's fully charged, it immediately fades to nothing. This is the kind of performance one would expect on a Casio Edifice costing circa €70. not an Edifice costing €304. Massive price difference. Now on a Casio Duro, one can be magnanimous because of the price point. One has to be realistic and expect some cost-cutting measure, such as mineral crystal, no AR coating, and of course, poor quality C3. But we're not looking at a €70 Duro here. We're looking at an Edifice at €304. Dreadful. Now the problem is, it's difficult to immediately differentiate between the hour hand and the minute hand because, of course, the application, the length of lume they've applied to the tips of the skeletonized hands is similar. And it's so bad the camera can't even focus on it because it just fades to nothing immediately. So exponentially with time, it just fades to nothing very quickly. You can see there. Initially, the potency looks okay, but then this is a problem with 2 to 3 or a maximum of 3 to 4. €304 should be 5 to 6 layers of BGW9 on the dial and hands, 5 to 6 layers of C3. But in any case, it has to be 5 to 6 on the dial and hands. This is just not good enough. This does not say to me €304. This is the kind of performance one would expect with a low-tier Chinese-made piece below €100, not 304. Just dreadful. Very disappointing. It really is negligible. It's like they haven't put any lume on the hands whatsoever. That's the performance. Just dreadful. So disappointment after disappointment. Right, so let's discuss the movement use because it's my favourite aspect of the piece. So you'll all be familiar with the Seiko NH35A. Now, Seiko make the NH35A in 2 plants in Japan and Malaysia respectively. Casio are using the Japanese-made version. Now, to put this into perspective, there is no discernible difference between the Japanese and Malaysian-made NH35As. They are equal quality, build quality, quality control, materials, finishing, accuracy. They've signed the rotor, as I've detailed, with laser etching, Edifice Casio, but other than that, it's a sterile standard NH35A. Has 24 joules. It runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 3 Hz. It has hand winding and hacking, which is used for complications. Quick set day complication, which as I've demonstrated works well. 41-hour power reserve is perfectly acceptable. The stated accuracy of the NH35A is -20 to +40 seconds per day. So rather wide accuracy range. However, I'm pleased to report that Casio are doing a good job of regulating the NH35As they're using. This one is running consistently at +8. +8 is okay when regulated in 5 positions. +8 is well within the stated -20 to +40 wide accuracy range. It is possible to regulate the NH35A better. Anything between +10 is good, but in 5 positions they can be regulated to chronometer accuracy of -4 to +6. Although +8 is good enough. So I think it's okay, although Casio could do better. I'd prefer to see chronometer limits of -4 to +6 attained, but +8 from an NH35A is good enough. So good quality choice of caliber, and I like it. In terms of reliability, it's well proven. It's a good, reliable, well proven workhorse caliber, and I like that they've at least signed the rotor with Edifice Casio, and that is acceptable because one has to be magnanimous with low-tier pieces. One isn't going to see a decorated movement with blued screws, pelage finishing, and coats de Genève. But nonetheless, good to see a signed rotor. So, correct choice of caliber. Just a shame that the mineral crystal glazing in the exhibition caseback is too thick and also too much clearance. And as I've detailed, although it does do a good job of displaying the caliber, it adds 1 to 1.5 millimeters thickness, and bubbleback caseback ruins the fit, as I've shown you in the wrist shots. So movement is excellent for this piece, and of course one could say this will be highly collectible and an iconic Casio Edifice because it is the first Casio automatic versus a battery-powered quartz. So I like the movement, but just a shame about the caseback, which is too thick for it. So finally, I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So low tier piece, low tier is €0 to €500. This is £269, which is €304 respectively. I'm going to declare it poor quality and I'm going to declare it poor value at €304. The reason why I say that is what we're looking at here is production cost cutting measure after production cost cutting measure and QC issue after QC issue. So C3 Superlume Laver is poor performance. No AR coating is dreadful. Then we have play in the end links, sloppy bracelet, play in all 3 hinge pins, sloppy clasp. Then we have got the production cost cutting measure of mineral crystal versus sapphire, and it's just dreadful throughout. So poor quality piece, poor value piece. The truth is, at €304, there are better quality alternatives and better value alternatives in the low tier between €0 and €500. And for reference, compare this to a €300 San Martin, which is also NH35A powered. One is getting 5 to 6 layers of BGW9 on the dial and hands, sapphire crystal with AR coating, tighter tolerances with the end links, a bracelet which isn't sloppy, and screw pins versus the production cost cutting measure of push pins, a solid mill clasp with micro adjustment, 10mm on the fly adjustment, heavier gauge to it, and the milled internals also don't have excess play, and if there is an exhibition case back, of course, sapphire crystal. So the truth is, this is poor quality and poor value, and it is wholly unacceptable for Casio to producing a piece like this, because this really says to me, in terms of quality and value, this is €100 and below quality level. This should be a €100 piece, not €304. It does not say to me 200 or 300. This says to me below 100 level quality and below €100 value. Lack of AR coating and poor quality C3 C Plume Nova. With the sloppy braces and clasp, it's a €100 piece. Dreadful. So poor quality, poor value. I cannot recommend it to you for consideration. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Casio EFK-100D-2A. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.